This is The Rundown with Steve Adams and Anabel Velasquez. Over the next hour, Steve and Anabel will give you the tips and tricks you need to help you or your kids from becoming a victim of human trafficking and ways you can help law enforcement hunt down the perpetrators. Steve is a former law enforcement officer, investigator, and also parent of a child who fell victim. Anabel is a survivor and has made it her lifelong mission to support and advocate for children and families across the state. Both serve on the board for the National Center for Child Safety and Awareness, a nonprofit organization providing resources to teach parents and children how to avoid becoming a victim of human trafficking. Find out more at therundown.org. These conversations are serious in nature and may not be suited for young children.
Hello and welcome to The Rundown. I'm Steve Adams.
And I'm Anabel Velasquez.
We have a very special guest today from the Placer County District Attorney's Office, DA Morgan Gire. Before we came on the air, he was telling us a little bit about himself, and I'm going to let him continue that because there's a lot there. This guy's awesome. So, Mr. Gire, could you go ahead and explain to our listeners what you were telling us about your credentials and where you've come from?
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. My name is Morgan Gire. I'm the elected district attorney of Placer County. I've been a career prosecutor for 24 years. I'm born and raised in the Placer County area, but I began my career as a prosecutor in actually Riverside County for the first 6 years, the next 16 years in Sacramento County, and then in April of 2020, I became the district attorney of Placer County and then was elected to a full term in June of 2022. I've done over 100 jury trials. I've served in just about every prosecutorial assignment from low-level thefts up to special circumstance homicides. Spent about 8 years of my career in the sexual assault and child abuse unit. I've done just about everything you can do as a prosecutor, and now I have the great pleasure of leading the dedicated women and men of the Placer County District Attorney's Office that are seeking to elevate the voices of victims in our community and hold offenders accountable.
Wow, that's amazing. That is
well,
awesome.
It's amazing to have you on and to talk about the issues that are facing our kids today, and and the people of not just Placer County, but our nation. To be honest with you, when it comes to crimes against kids, specifically, let's talk about human trafficking. Do we see a lot of that in Placer County?
Fortunately, we don't see a lot, but what we do see is very troubling. No community is immune from this. This
Correct.
is a rapidly growing criminal enterprise that has oftentimes we see it take the place of where we used to see criminal street gangs engage in widespread narcotic sales. We see more and more incidents of human trafficking now. So even though the volume of cases isn't as high as it is elsewhere in the state, in Placer County, we do take it seriously. We devote resources to it because criminals don't know county lines, and a victim in Oakland or Sacramento can be trafficked in our community and vice versa. So it really takes a kind of thinking that transcends our county lines and our agencies and requires everybody to work together to make sure we're tackling the problem.
Exactly. And I was just going to mention that it does take not just the DA's office or Placer County SO or any of the local agencies, but correct me if I'm wrong, but this really entails working together with, your federal partners, Homeland Security, FBI, and anybody else that we can get involved in, to help combat these crimes.
It's absolutely right, and one of the key components to these investigations is the amount of intelligence you have on the front end, and that comes from agencies beyond your borders or beyond your counties or sometimes beyond your states or even your countries. And we rely on our federal partners to share that information to assist us. We have, at the local level, we have quite a bit of authority locally, but beyond that, we need help. And so far, specifically with regard to human trafficking, we've had a number of successes and pretty good working relationships with our state and federal partners. Obviously, there have been challenging times, both financially and just politically, but the law enforcement agencies always are very good, especially in these kinds of cases, at sharing information that ultimately lead to cracking open these rings and ultimately bringing justice to the traffickers and, more importantly, some degree of healing and redemption for the survivors.
Exactly.
And that actually brings up a good segue for the Empower and Resilience Project, which I would love for you to share more on, because I mean, it's pretty exciting to be part of that network. And yeah, please go ahead and share with our listeners what that is.
Well, I thank you for the question, and I appreciate both of your efforts in this sort of topic as well. The Empower and Resilience Project is an initiative of the DA's office that really it seeks to give empowerment and freedom to the voices of our victims, to elevate them so that they can find the strength to sort of take back their victimization and not let it define them, and to empower them to let their stories sort of affect change in our community and beyond, so that others in similar situations know that, one, they're not alone, and two, that they can find their voice as well. And for those voices to carry through our community and have an impact at the state level through legislation, through empowering victims through their own cases to stand up and speak and have their voices heard in courts, and to help educate our community. Oftentimes people don't know the inner workings of the criminal justice system, unfortunately, until they find themselves mired in it based on a terrible tragedy. And when our victims throughout our community find that voice and sort of talk to one another and talk to people, be those students or community members, then they already are a step ahead should they find themselves in that position. And a more educated and empowered community, I think, just makes for a better way of life for all of us. So it's really a way to give voices to our victims and our survivors of crime so that they can sort of carry it forward.
I think that's great. And a lot of times when these victim survivors are going through this, they feel really like lonely, like they're the only ones that are going through this. And when they can, for lack of a better term, network with other survivors, other victims that have gone through similar situations or are still going through that, it gives them, I would think, more hope that they can actually see the light at the end of a tunnel, that maybe there is someone there or an agency there that can actually help, or another person there that is, like I said, been through a similar situation, that now they can bounce that off of each other and, work together with a common goal of to try to get better and pay it forward.
You're exactly right, and it is one of the most inspiring moments of my professional career when I see sort of those victims and survivors connect with one another and build upon each other and rely on each other to find their voice. And just sort of anecdotally, we had a no-body homicide that was a rather high-profile case, and the mother of the murder victim became a support down the line when someone else found themselves in that same tragic position. And these two moms got together, and I sort of watched the evolution of this second victim's mom over the course of several years, at the point now where she's speaking at rallies at the Capitol. She's speaking to classes with law enforcement on what the victim's perspective is, and it really is just so humbling to see these people connect through this tragedy and turn that pain into passion and really affect change. And you can see their healing. I mean, you can objectively look at them and see these people feel better, feel more confident, and know that they're helping other people down the road.
Exactly. They walk into a meeting or a group, with apprehension, pretty much a straight face. And a lot of times, and I've seen this as well over the past several years doing what we do, they walk out with a smile on their face. And, it's so encouraging and it's so exciting to see, because a lot of times you don't see that smile, and it's just a glimmer of light and hope. And it's so exciting to see, see them go through that, because now we know that they know there's hope for them.
That's exactly right. And so much of the sterility and frightening part of the criminal justice system is the lack of information that people often have. And these folks are empowered to ask the right questions. And oftentimes, police officers, prosecutors, they have lots of cases, they get busy, and the confidence to be able to say, hey, wait a minute, I have a question about this, or how does this work, really is enlightening and empowering to them to just have the information so that they can share it, And it sort of tells those of us in the criminal justice system, hey, every now and then we need to take stock of what we're doing and make sure that we are explaining things the way we need to. Their sort of confidence to be able to ask those questions makes us better at what we do, which it should be the goal of everyone in law enforcement, is how do I provide this service and this level of care to people as best I can.
Exactly. And, a lot of times, and it's no fault of law enforcement, but Anabel and I worked a case down in the Central California of a missing girl. And what we found down there is they were, a lot of the people that we wanted to talk to, witnesses or potential witnesses, were afraid to talk to police and would not talk to law enforcement. But as private investigators, they would talk to us. And, we always try to encourage them to talk to law enforcement. They're actually the good guys. They want to help. And, I did the job for, 35 plus years. And, I got into this job for a reason, and that was to help people. It's never left, my mind on what I want to do and how I want to do it. And that's the goal of everyone, that I know that has become, a law enforcement officer, and that's to go out and to help people. We risk our lives for people that we don't even know. We run into the gunfire for people we don't even know. So, we want to help, and we just have to convey that to people that are a little apprehensive of law enforcement.
And one of the family members of a homicide victim that we have in Placer now comes along with us. There are several members in my staff, myself included, that teach classes to investigators and patrol officers who are seeking to become detectives. And one of the segments of this class are parents of murdered children who come in and talk about their experience, and not only from an empathetic and here's the victim's perspective is it very impactful, but also from an investigatory side. When people come in and share their experiences, it gets people thinking, well, wait a minute, I've got that case that's gone cold sitting on my desk. What if I go back to it now in light of what I've just heard from these families, and I give it another look? There are opportunities that have opened because of the empowerment of our crime victims and survivors. And then what we've seen most recently is the parents of a lot of our children who have died from fentanyl poisoning. Right. They have partnered with us to go into schools to talk to parent organizations and parent information nights, to go in to talk to thousands and thousands of high school students and middle school students to talk about their experience, about how they've never heard of fentanyl before. And it's been remarkable to see just the level of strength and confidence of these parents who were just completely devastated at the loss of their child, right, to be able to say, I'm going to turn this into a mission. And it is truly inspiring. That
is exciting, and great news that they can get into the schools like that. That's one thing about what we do with the National Center for Child Safety and Awareness. I founded this organization almost 23 years ago, and we've been in schools, churches, different community events all over the United States, Canada, and we do teach kids in a fun, positive way how to avoid becoming that victim of, abductions, human trafficking, sexual assault. And, like I said, 500,000 kids and parents over the last 23 years. That's pretty cool. And It's just exciting to be able to get in there and do that and teach, the kids and the parents and the staff. And I'm really excited to hear that that's also now being done for, this fentanyl issue that we have, because it is a serious problem that are killing our kids too fast.
It is, and I think the partnership we've had with the parents have made the message even more clear and impactful to the students. Frankly, you can tune out a prosecutor, and the message may not be received as well from me as it is from a mom or a dad who had to live this experience. And when we partner together, then we can get sort of the components of our message, both the legal side and the investigatory side, and the precaution side, along with sort of the deep message that these parents can convey. And I think it just makes that message all the more real and effective.
We're going to take a quick break, so don't go away. We'll be right back.
Did you know that in 2022 you didn't have to lose money in the stock market?
At Desert Capital Management Group, we strive to make your needs and goals apparent and your retirement abundant.
Call us today for a free portfolio analysis at 310-640-9100.
Desert Capital Management Group is here to help.
Southland Data Processing, employer solutions with you in mind. We can help your business improve HR compliance, timekeeping, cash flow efficiency, and your employees' access to their payroll. We are in the people business. Southland Data Processing, employer solutions with you in mind. Go to sdppayroll.com. That's S like Sam, D as in David, P like Paul, payroll.com.
You own a machine shop, an old school mom and pop machine shop, or maybe a business a little bigger like an aerospace or industrial company, or something in between. Thermo Fusion provides thermal solutions. Thermo-fusion.com. We're a metalworking company specializing in heat treating and brazing. From carburizing and nitriding to cryogenic hardening. With vacuum aluminum brazing available, you have thermal needs. We have thermal solutions. Thermo Fusion for heat treating. Learn more at thermo-fusion.com.
Visit Denio's Farmers Market and Swap Meet this weekend and enjoy family fun, shopping for great bargains and fresh produce, while noshing on tasty food and drinks. Open Fridays through Sundays, there's always something special going on, like free live entertainment at the Market Plaza Live. So get your family and friends together and join the excitement. Visit deniosmarket.com for details.
Take a peek at Denio's Farmers Market and Swap Meet. Take a peek at Denio's this week.
The National Center for Child Safety and Awareness is committed to the safety and welfare of children. The NCCSA is on the fighting side to stop and prevent abductions and abuse. NCCSA works with local authorities, including law enforcement, other nonprofits, schools, and churches to educate families, students, and parents about the dangers that exist in our society for innocent children that often result in human trafficking. It starts with awareness. What are dangerous situations? What tips can be used to prevent an event from happening? And how does someone identify child abuse? The National Center for Child Safety and Awareness will come to your meeting, gathering, or school to talk to your organization. They are in the fight to help you keep children safe. For more information or to join the fight against crimes against kids, go to therundown.org. That's therundown.org.
Now, more of The Rundown with Steve Adams and Anabel Velasquez, helping you protect your family from human trafficking and other crimes against children. These conversations are serious in nature and may not be suited for young children.
Hello, and thank you, and welcome back to The Rundown. My name is Anabel Velasquez.
And I'm Steve Adams.
And for those that are just joining us, we've had Placer County DA Morgan Gire, and we have been talking about the various ways that Placer County helps promote the education of fentanyl poisoning. That's where we left off before we dropped off the first segment. So, Morgan, I know that Placer County has a One Pill Can Kill educational podcast. Can you share more about that?
I would love to. Thank you. Yes, we found ourselves deeply affected by the fentanyl crisis, like every community. It came into a stark focus in the fall of 2020 when we lost a number of teenagers to fentanyl poisoning, and we were seeing young people dying from fentanyl poisonings. We were able to investigate a few of those early on and hold people criminally liable, but we realized that we weren't going to be able to arrest or prosecute our way out of this problem when people were being deceived. They were buying pills online that they thought were something else, like a Percocet or a Xanax, and it was really nothing but fentanyl, and we knew we had to get the word out. So we started aggressively creating an awareness education campaign, and that really came to fruition when we got into all of the schools, all of the high schools in Placer County. So we partnered with the families, these bereaved families who had lost children, who were willing to come in with us, partner with us, and tell their story, along with our healthcare providers, our nonprofits, our law enforcement partners, and really tackle the problem from all angles directly to the students. And by within a year, we were able to reach over 35,000 students, about 10,000 parents.
That's amazing.
creative things I'm most proud of. We put an insert in every homeowner's tax bill. So in October, when you get that friendly tax bill, you also got an insert that had a QR code to the entire fentanyl One Pill Can Kill program. So you really couldn't travel in and around Placer County over the last 2 years without seeing somewhere the One Pill Can Kill campaign, and it has been, I think it's hard to measure in lives saved, but as we track the data, we're seeing some results trending in the right direction, and more importantly, we're hearing about these critical conversations that our young teenagers and young adults are having with their families, with their friends, that are leading to people saying, "Hey, I'm stressed. I need some help," rather than choosing to self-medicate and risk being another victim of fentanyl poisoning.
Exactly. And, that was one of the major issues, especially with a COVID, everybody being stuck in their home and, can't leave, can't go to school, can't go to work. A lot of people were actually doing exactly what you just said, trying to self-medicate. And like the slogan says, one pill can kill. And if you get the wrong pill, then it could end very tragically for the person and their family.
But I think a lot of the ways that it's hitting the students is hearing from the students themselves that, they've had personal experience. I know I can tell you that my son's best friend, his ex-girlfriend was the young woman or young child, the teenager, the minor that was killed off of fentanyl poisoning last year. And it hits home when it is like, a peer, or when it's someone that you knew, or, and I think the kids are a little bit more respondent to that when it's like not coming from an adult, right? And I really congratulate you guys on using the tactics that you have, because it's hitting home for the kids.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And Anabel, you're exactly right. When they hear this from parents, they hear it from students, they've even heard it from friends of people who have lost their lives, their friends. The message just hits home with them. I mean, it's so impactful. I have kids, and they're always noisy. And we would go into these assemblies with 1,000 students in a gymnasium, and you could hear a pin drop when the parents are speaking. It's remarkable. And there are kids who are in tears at the story. There are kids who are lining up afterward to talk to the parents to say, we have a small community. I knew someone who knew your son, or my friend is struggling with some depression issues. And Steve, to your point about COVID, it was so remarkable. We had all of these students who were missing these monumental moments of their life, their graduations, their senior years of games, their senior years of concerts, and all of the things that sort of defined their childhood. And it really had an effect. And that's what fed this desire to, cope, and it fed this market for these counterfeit pills that were just frightening. But these kids they absorb this message, and we've heard from so many people talking about how the conversations that we wanted them to have, they're now having. Now they're now empowered to say, "Hey, I'm struggling," or "My friend is struggling and needs a little help with this, and this is the path we're going to choose, rather than risking our lives with one pill."
That's amazing, because like you said, getting the education out there is key, and that's what we've been doing with our organization. And the thing is, it's so, like you said, more impactful when it's coming from a parent of a child that passed away because of this pill. And with Anabel and I, what we do, we could come in here and preach what we do all day long, but unless we have experience, as victims, as survivors, we're not as impactful. As a law enforcement officer, I was, in charge of crimes against kids for a long time, and that's what I investigated for about 8 years. And I could talk, to my audience on that, but unless you have that experience, where you have a child that is that victim, that survivor, or you are that person that has gone through a sexual assault or some type of, human trafficking, it makes a big difference when you're that person. Now you're talking to your audience. Now you have worldly experience, not the experience that you would prefer to have, but you still have that experience that you can actually share with your group now?
It's been a phenomenal success here, and the parents, I just can't speak to their courage enough, and just the power of the human spirit, their desire to share their story. I mean, the exhaustion emotionally that it takes from them to stand up, day after day and week after week and tell the worst moment of their life.
Yes,
they're telling it for the benefit here in a gymnasium of 1,000 students at a time, and they wanted to do it. We have access to the schools, and the partnership just worked because they have a message to give. We want to add to that message and add to that prevention effort, and it's just been so inspiring. It's not a traditional role for a prosecutor's office, but this is what's going to make a dent in this problem. This is what's going to solve it. We will still hold dealers accountable and harshly at that, but really the lives are going to be saved on the front end with parents like these who are willing to come forward and share their story.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so crazy how easily they can get it, through social media, specifically like Snapchat. My kids had shared with me that it was so easy to get drugs off of Snapchat, and I was like, what? And I mean, that's what the dealers like to use because it disappears on them.
That's exactly right. It's accessible. It's easy. Parents, frankly, can't stay ahead of either the technology or the codes that are used. I mean, we have these constantly evolving sheets that law enforcement use, and Steve, this, that have all the little emoji pictures of what the different drugs mean, and you would look at them and think these are just harmless text messages, but they're not. They're actually coded messages about what sort of drugs are available and what you can get. And to say to a parent, hey, just monitor your kid's phone, well, unless they know really how to do it, that's a pretty unreasonable request given just how prevalent phones are in kids' hands now, and you've got to educate them on all sides of this.
And correct me if I'm wrong, though. A lot of times they will switch those up as well, so they're not really being looked at like an emoji, for example. They may be using the same one for quite a while, and then they switch it up to make it look a little different, but doing the same type of activity.
It's exactly right. There's a sort of a shared coded language between customers and dealers so that they don't get caught. And dealers are very intuitive and very smart and are trying to stay one step ahead of the investigators as we're all trying to catch them. But the evolving nature of crime is very difficult to stay on top of, and they do that. They switch it around, which is a frightening consequence.
So let me ask you this: how easy is it for investigators and the district attorney's office to prosecute these folks when using these emojis? Is that something that the law is able to catch them on? Or I'm just, because I know that there's certain words and even the way that it's phrased can definitely cause them to be caught. But, since social media has emojis, how does the law go around that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Ultimately, we have to prove what someone is thinking and what they're doing if we're trying to prove that they're selling what they know to be, for this conversation, fentanyl. We have to be able to sort of give substance to what those emojis mean. Most of the time in context, and we can put that together. But really what it takes to put one of these cases together, we need access to that digital world. We need the phone. We need the iCloud. We need to be able to prove this is what the person is doing so that there's no ambiguity, so that someone that we charge with a crime can't say, well, no, I thought I was selling this and not this. We're trying to get to the point where we're telling everyone now fentanyl is everywhere. We've seen it in methamphetamine. We've seen it in cocaine. So the idea that nothing has fentanyl in it anymore, I mean, we're disavowing the community of that notion. But we do have to prove any particular case beyond a reasonable doubt the elements of a crime, and that is that they knew what they were selling were illegal substances, and that can be difficult. But like I said before, the phone is usually the critical component in these cases, particularly when we have a poisoning or an overdose death and we have a coroner that responds. The first thing our investigators say is, where's the phone? Because if I can find the communications, we can build that trail. And we've been able to do that a number of times in our county, thankfully, to some very dedicated investigator, and it takes hundreds of hours to go through that to say, okay, here's the conversations where we can find them, and if we can, then we can hold someone accountable. And some of the most difficult conversations we have is when we investigate, we put a lot of time and effort into investigating a case and we come up short and we just can't prove it. Those are some of the most difficult cases we can ever have as law enforcement, as you know, Steve, and as prosecutors, is to say, we've tried, but we just can't get past this hurdle, and we're just not going to be able to charge a case. I don't like those. I wish I could investigate them all successfully, but that's not the reality. But on the ones we can try and give some measure of justice. I hate the word closure to families, because that wound never closes.
It never does.
It just sort of scars over. But to bring some sort of at least resolution on the legal side, that's my goal, in a way that leaves them understanding and at least knowing that we've done all we can do.
Now, a lot of these pills are coming from our southern borders. Is there a problem, or have you noticed people trying to recreate and manufacture the fentanyl here in the States or even in our county?
Not yet. I imagine we'll see that in the next couple of years. Right now, the actual fentanyl powder is primarily produced in China and then sent to Mexico, where it's pressed into these counterfeit pills and then smuggled generally through our southern border and through into our country through all the ways that narcotics have always gotten through all sorts of different mechanisms. But right now it is so easy to buy and to smuggle that there hasn't been the need. We haven't cracked down on keeping it from coming in to the point that we have seen our street labs pop up. I'm sure they exist on sort of a small level, but we haven't seen it now just because we can't control the influx. Because for every shipment we get or every dealer we take down, there are 4 or 5 more right there. And then you see, as we start to make a dent in seizures, you'll see dealers change the marketing of their product to open it up to a whole new demographic. That's why we've seen rainbow fentanyl and scented and flavored fentanyl and all of the things that you've seen on the news about the fentanyl crisis appealing more and more to younger generations, is to do exactly that, is to open up a new demographic and a new market and making it that much harder for us to crack down on.
Exactly. I'm going to date myself here, but in the 80s, when I was working in Southern California, the meth was really starting to make a hit on the streets. And as time, went on and this drug evolved, people were actually manufacturing it, and we have a serious issue with that, with people manufacturing methamphetamine. And I just see, at some point, like you said, maybe a couple years down the road, maybe a little longer, who knows? But I just see that, happening because it is so, it is such a drug that is highly wanted, I guess you could say. But at the same time, it is not one of the most, it is the most deadly drug out there right now, illegal drug that is being consumed by our kids.
It's exactly right, and you're spot on. At some point, the investigative efforts and the seizures will drive, just out of necessity, will drive the manufacture of fentanyl into new methods, which will eventually be street labs. Much like we saw, you're right, with methamphetamine, when we saw clandestine meth labs throughout a lot of our like eastern desert areas in California. We've seen anecdotally some places in Central America where they are creating these literally in jungles. The problem, the fentanyl is so deadly and so toxic that it kills the foliage. And it's actually easy to spot where they're trying to manufacture it because it's killed all the trees and shrubs around. So it drives it into, the frightening thing is it drives it into a lot of the neighborhoods. And so you'll have a family living upstairs, and in the basement will be, a clandestine fentanyl lab, and the fumes and everything about it is so toxic. I'm hopeful we don't ever get to that point, but as we saw with the meth labs in the 80s and 90s, it'll be the same model if we don't get a hold of it.
And the thing about the meth, though, when these guys were manufacturing, I remember going into these labs, and we didn't know a whole lot about them at that time, way back in the 80s. But I do know that if these chemicals are not handled properly, there's going to be an explosion, and it's a massive explosion. So that was our concern back then. The other issue, though, with the fentanyl is it doesn't take hardly anything to get that into your system. I mean, a breath, you breathe wrong in one of these pills, or one of these manufacturers, or however it's getting over here, you're gone. I mean, it's that quick.
It is so lethal in such small amounts. You're exactly right. And we've seen first responders, we've seen police canines, we've seen everybody on the front lines of this suffering the effects of it. There's even been stories of people who are friends who are performing, mouth-to-mouth and CPR on their friends, and then through that transfer, they get an overdose symptoms and can have even died in those situations. I mean, it's not the explosiveness, literally, of the meth, but it's the volatility and the lethality of it that makes it such a different class of narcotic than nothing like we've seen before. Because of that lethality in such small doses.
And if you don't have Narcan, on hand, there's not a lot that can be done for somebody that has ingested this, and that's, it's so important, this Narcan, how it can, reverse the effects. And, but boy, I tell you, if you don't have that and somebody does, accidentally or on purpose ingest the fentanyl, it's going to be a bad day.
It is, and that's one of the messages we've tried to include in our presentations is, hey, you're not going to get in trouble if you render first aid, because we've seen these horrific situations where people are suffering from an overdose or effects of fentanyl, and people are worried about getting in trouble, especially young adults or teenagers, and they run away. And the last thing we want is for no one to be able to be in a position to administer the Narcan. And so part of our messaging is, hey, there are laws that will protect you if you are trying to help someone, and the presence of this Narcan is really the only thing that is going to give someone a chance to save their lives. Unfortunately, we've seen in this county and throughout the state are more and more efforts to have that on school campuses. I know all of our first responders carry them. We hand them out at some of our parent nights. So a lot of our parents now just keep it in the glove box just in case, even if they don't have any indications that their kids or kids' friends are experimenting. But the presence of it will help someone who is suffering the effects of that fentanyl.
Absolutely. I carry 2 in my truck, and I carry 2 in my wife's Jeep, because you never know who you're going to run into that might have accidentally ingested that crap.
That's exactly right.
But then on the flip side, you have users that are actually still saying, oh, it's fine. I've used fentanyl before and look at me, I'm okay. You do have those folks that are like still, advertising for it, saying you'll be fine, and that's like the thing that we need to also tell people is like, yeah, there are people that are surviving using this, but that's the very few, and the majority of them are dying.
That's exactly right. And that's been sort of my message is we're fighting 2 fronts here. We're fighting the poisoning front and the overdose front. The poisoning meaning someone is just getting something different than what they thought, and it's fentanyl and it kills them. And the overdose, we have people who are battling addiction, and sometimes that battle is over decades. Sometimes it's short, but fentanyl has changed that problem as well. And people who are battling addiction think just a little bit of fentanyl or just, I'm not doing much, or I've got a high tolerance. This stuff is so lethal. We are seeing those addicts dying right and left as well. There's no safe way to take this stuff. I mean, it is poison. There's no uniformity to it. It really is a game of Russian roulette every time, only the odds are much worse. The new DEA statistics are that 6 out of 10 of the pills that you purchase online are lethal. Not only are they definitely fentanyl, 99% of the pills purchased online are fentanyl. 60% of those are fatal, contain fatal doses. So even if you're doing it to feed an addiction, the odds are you are going to have a fatal encounter at some point, probably sooner rather than later, which is a whole nother front to fight this battle on.
Oh, that's terrible. That's so terrible. And it is truly Russian roulette.
It is. It's frightening, but hopefully through our efforts and the efforts of our fellow counties who are as aggressive with the awareness and the education, hopefully the message gets out and we reduce the demand and we don't have any more victims of this terrible crisis.
Yeah, I hope so too, because my friend's stepson, He actually passed away last year due to that. And, he was missing for 12 days. And he was actually a John Doe in the Alameda County coroner's office. And when they finally went over there, that's when they found that he had been there since the day he had been missing. Well, the night before, he had went to go, score some drugs, and he ended up passing out over there. And they left him in a house to die because they were scared. Mm-hmm. They were scared that they were going to get caught. They were scared that they were going to get prosecuted. And he ended up passing away, which is so unfortunate. He could have been saved, but at the end of the day, we do need to continue to share with folks, like, fentanyl will kill you. It really will. Yes. It's just not it's when it's going to kill you.
And unfortunately, that story you just told is so common. It is so frustrating to hear. I have a couple of prosecutors that work in our office assigned to our narcotics unit that are dealing with all of the fentanyl, and they would come in and just look at me and say, we had another one, and would say the age. And they didn't have to say anything more than, we had another one, 22 years old. We had another one, 17 years old. And it's maddening because you want to scream it from the rooftops about how deadly this stuff is. And you don't want it. That's one of the problems I've had. We are pretty actively engaged in advocating for legislation as well. I did that in Sacramento. I've done it on the statewide level for our statewide prosecutors association, and I do it here in Placer. And one of the problems is sometimes people want to conflate this message about fentanyl with the war on drugs message, when they say, well, that never worked. Just telling people to be afraid of drugs doesn't work. And I hate. The hard part is to convey to them that this is different. The landscape is different. We didn't have drugs in the 80s and 90s. Yes, you would be addicted and your life trajectory would change, and ultimately you may die from that, but not the first time.
No.
Your ability, teenagers are going to experiment, and we know that.
Yes.
They're always going to engage in risk-taking behavior, no matter what that is. But when it comes to experimenting with drugs, we know they're going to do it, but we've never been in a situation where literally the one pill the first time you ever try it kills you. You are robbed, and parents are robbed of that opportunity to identify risk factors, identify behaviors that might show kids are struggling. I mean, some of the kids that we've had that have been victims of these poisonings, straight A students, in theater, they're athletes. They didn't present parents with any signs of, hey, something's wrong. I mean, everyone was isolated, so you can't, during COVID, so you can't say, well, he's kind of isolating from his friends.
Yeah.
But there weren't, falling grades. They weren't completely withdrawing, and these parents didn't have any indication. And that's what makes it different from drugs that get you hooked and addicted and then deteriorate your life over time. You don't have that opportunity with this new drug.
Right, and look at the evolution of the drug. Say since the 60s, there was LSD, and the marijuana. Everybody back in the 60s was doing the marijuana, and then what we had a real problem with, I started in law enforcement in 1979. What we had a real problem with going into the 80s was PCP.
Right.
Phencyclidine. And then from there, cocaine, and then methamphetamine, and yeah, you could die if you OD'd on it, if you took too much of it. But with the fentanyl, I mean, look at the evolution. It's come from smoking marijuana and getting high to taking one pill and dying.
Right.
I mean, it's just crazy where all this is leading, and what's next? Are they gonna try to supersize the fentanyl pills now? I don't know how they can make it any worse, but they have with these drugs. They have always attempted to take it to the next level, and that's where it's at right now. It's at that level where if it gets on on the tip of your finger, just a hair on your finger, you're dead. So that's, I would definitely educate parents about that. Look at where we come from. Look at where we're at today. And I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah. And even the fentanyl landscape is starting to change. We see it mixed with, these horse tranquilizers, and they call it tranq. And we see carfentanil. We see versions and variations of it that just when you think something couldn't be any worse or more deadly, it evolves and becomes just that. And we'll see how that plays out, because every time we try and crack down on one thing, it's like the proverbial game of whack-a-mole.
Yep.
The minute you identify something and go for it, something else pops up, and then you go for that, and another one pops up.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was working narcotics a long time ago, we were always told glove up, because you don't know what you're going to be touching. And now it's glove up, mask up, suit up.
Yep.
I mean, it's taken it, like I said, to a whole entirely different level on what you have to do to protect yourself. And the street cops out there, when they run into this problem, they don't have all that equipment to do that. So
right.
They don't know. A friend of mine, he's an FTO down at San Diego County Sheriff's Office, and one of his trainees fell victim to the fentanyl, and luckily he was there. My buddy was there to give him the Narcan, and he had to do like 2 or 3 times with the Narcan just to get a beat again, a heartbeat, and then he stopped breathing a couple times on the way to the hospital. I mean and there was hardly anything there. So
yeah,
man, I am so grateful for you, Morgan, and for what you're doing with the DA's office and getting this message out to our residents. I grew up in Placer County, and I love this county. I remember when Roseville was the big town that we used to go to. Yeah, 23,000 people. Oh, let's go to Roseville. We're in Rockland, which could be a drive, but let's go.
It had the only fast food. That's right. I was a Loomis kid, and Roseville was the big town.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so thank God for.
I appreciate that. Thank you. We are doing good work. We've got a wonderful, supportive community, and the message has been received well, and we're continuing to spread it. So we are just thankful to have the community support that we have in Placer, because not all communities are supportive of law enforcement partnering up and trying to spread awareness. So we don't take it for granted, and we will continue to try and educate our community as best we can on all issues that relate to criminal justice, because so much of our life is affected by the criminal justice system. Someone's going to be a victim of something throughout the course of their life. Hopefully nothing serious, but if nothing else, we're all going to have jury duty at some point, and the more informed we are, the better the system operates. That's for sure.
Well, I can tell you, as someone that has been supported by the Placer County DA's office, I mean, just recently we were able to deny my ex-husband's parole. So thank you so much for supporting us and all of that. And, I can tell you that is the reason why I bought a house and I came back from the Bay Area to live here in Placer County, because of the way that I was supported by the DA's office, because of me feeling like, Placer County does not play when it comes to these types of crimes. You really did go above and beyond. And, I will support the statement that folks had told me that if it had happened in any other county, it would not have happened the way that it did with Placer County. So I have to commend you guys over and over again. You guys have done so much for us in our healing. And, that is just amazing. And I can just shout from the rooftops all the time that Placer County has done what they needed to do and continues to do.
Well, I greatly appreciate it. I would hope that one day you wouldn't be able to say that it would be the same anywhere. But when I see things, especially down in Southern California, that the DA's office is not involving themselves in parole and lifer hearings, it breaks my heart, because it is a scary process. And victims should not be re-victimized based on the system, and a system that oftentimes leaves the victims with the impression that the accused and the defendants have all the rights, because that shouldn't be the case. It's legally not the case, but it takes an extra voice within the system to be able to give voices to our survivors. So we will continue to do that in Placer, and we will continue to encourage my colleagues across the state to do the same. And we've got a number of very good offices that are very supportive of our victims and survivors, and hopefully that becomes the same throughout the state. But
I'm hoping so.
We'll keep hope. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Morgan, we have about 2 minutes left, and I just want you to know that you are more than welcome to use our platform on this radio station anytime you need it. And I would ask you, what can we do to help you and the citizens of Placer County, we want to be that voice as well. We want to be that advocate. So if you need us, if we can be used by you guys, please do.
Well, I will take you up on that. I am a firm believer that we need to engage and educate our community more on all the issues in the criminal justice system, and those evolve quite often. And there are things that I think the public just needs to know, and they need to know how the system really works, how the sausage is really made, and sometimes, in my opinion, the best disinfectant is daylight. So I will gladly accept, and as issues that are of critical importance to our community come up, I will take you up on that offer, and glad to share all of my perspective and experience in these issues with you and your audience.
That would be amazing. All right. Well, I just want to thank you again for coming on. And like I said, we're here anytime you want us. And my listeners, if you live in Placer County, if you have any questions, please feel free to give the DA's office a call. I've had to use them in the past as well as a victim, and they're absolutely amazing. And I just want to say a very big thank you again. And everybody out there, remember, it is a right for a child to be safe. You're going to hear me close that with every show, and it's a slogan that I've used for the entire 23 years that I've had this organization. It's a right for a child to be safe, not a privilege. See you later. We'll talk to you next time.
This has been The Rundown with Steve Adams and Anabel Velasquez. Their mission is to protect you and your family from falling victim to human traffickers and other criminals. Together, we can make our communities safer. To invite Steve or Anabel to come speak at your church, school, or event, or to find out more about the National Center for Child Safety and Awareness, go to therundown.org. That's therundown.org.